the amendments moved by the member for Maranoa be agreed to. I give the call to the honourable member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I rise to speak on the amendments, the original amendments before the House being the amendments from the Senate, introducing essentially expanding the water trigger to this legislation, and the further amendment by the member for Maranoa, essentially seeking to now, at this last minute, introduce an inclusion of carbon capture and sequestration and its impact and a consideration of its impact on water. And whilst in principle I think that is absolutely necessary, I am concerned at this very last-minute attempt at putting this in without any explanation or discussion, which seems to be a very last-minute discovery by the member for Maranoa for the procedure in this place or the ability to move amendments to improve legislation. So I commend the government on supporting the amendments and the message from the Senate when it comes to expanding the water trigger and updating its definition. I do note it was a commitment prior to the election, and it is really important for this to happen. It was only in October that the member for Mackellar, who unfortunately can't be here today due to illness, introduced a private member's bill to that effect, and I had the pleasure of seconding that private member's bill to expand this water trigger to include all forms of gas extraction to ensure that consideration by the Minister of the impact of projects on water. We know for traditional owners, water is an incredibly important part of culture. And we also know through our warming planet and climate that our water resources are going to become more and more under pressure. We know there are expected reductions in water tables, in amounts of water, rainfall per year. And so we know for communities water is a really incredibly important resource. And we really need to distinguish between that use of water by projects, in particular when it comes to all forms of gas fracking, and maintaining water as that very essence and incredibly important element for sustaining human life. And for traditional owners in relation to their cultural association and recognition of it. So I think it's incredibly important, and I thank the crossbench in both houses, and in particular the Greens, for having pushed the government to accelerate this amendment. I acknowledge it was a commitment, but the delay had been concerning because projects like the Beetaloo Basin, it's incredibly important that the water, the use of water, the impact on the water table of projects like the Beetaloo Basin is part of that environmental approval. We know the Northern Territory government had greenlit that gas production in the Beetaloo Basin, the region between Katherine and Tennant Creek with big reserves of shale gas. And it's incredibly important for those communities and those elders who travelled down to Canberra, and I hope many people in this place actually took the time to listen to them, to talk about the importance of the impact on their water to their communities. So it's incredibly important also from the Pepper inquiry into fracking in the Northern Territory, the deep concern and the strong opposition to development of any onshore shale gas industry in their country. So I welcome the amendments. I would like to see further information from the Nationals in relation to their last-minute amendment, because that would assist, I think, the procedure in this place, but I certainly welcome any legislation that increases scrutiny on the use of nature and resources and water in relation to mining, gas extraction and, in particular, carbon capture and storage.